All right, it's Monday. That means it's time to talk to Loren Montgomery, the head football coach of the number one and state champion Bixby Spartans, state champions, state champions, state champions. This is sponsored by Sunrise Cafe, 101st and Sheridan. Tell you more about them in a minute. First of all, it was a bye week for Bixby, but I don't want to talk about football first. I want to talk about the steak feed and how it went. I saw the names on there, and of course, your stars are there, which is, in my opinion, the key to your program. Your best players are your hardest working players. They're the guys who showed up. So explain what it was again and tell me how it went.
Yeah, absolutely. Our steak eater dinner that we do a few years ago, well, many years ago actually, my wife and I told all of our players that had perfect attendance during the summer that we would have them over to the house and cook them a ribeye. And I think the first year there were seven, maybe eight the next year, because we toyed around with all different sorts of things to improve summer attendance. And so that thing has continued to grow. You'll see Steak Eater shirts around town. They say 100% on the front and Steak Eater on the back. And then last Wednesday, since it's a bye week, we had the old Hasty Bake tailgate trailer out and cooked up about 75 ribeyes. I think we ended up with 64 players this year with perfect attendance over the summer, and just a really good thing. Our guys take a lot of pride in it. You know, parents will be asking me right now what the dead week is or what weeks we have off in the summer or whatever. But we think consistency is a key ingredient to being successful, and we just kind of find ways to maybe remove barriers to consistency, and we think that's one of them.
Yeah, and again, Presley was there and Carson Kirby, and your hardest working players are your best players, and that leaves an example for those young people coming up behind, doesn't it, Coach?
Without a doubt, I've got a sophomore on the team and have seen those guys come up and they take a ton of pride in wearing that T-shirt. We presented the T-shirts. I did a handwritten letter to each of the guys and mailed it to their house and try to make it individual for each kiddo. But the next day at school, you saw 64 brand new steak eater shirts roaming around the hallways.
And I'm sure with the Hasty Bake tent out there, it was really good. Now, are you cooking or the Hasty Bake folks cooking? Dad's cooking? How'd that work?
No, three of us coaches always cook. They drop the trailer off and let us use it, and they've got three of their Hastings charcoal grills in there, and so Coach Flowers, Coach Suffle, and myself get in there and get our eyes all smoked out, and yeah, it's something else. In fact, I was wearing a hat this morning that I wore the other day when I was cooking, and it still smells like Hasty Bake.
Yeah, that's a good bad thing, right? I understand how that goes. All right, let's get to football. Talk about the work, or tell me a little bit about the work that was done during that week. What'd you focus on? What'd you get done, you think?
Well, yeah. So we've got Choctaw coming up, defending 6A2 state champions. Very, very talented. Lost a tough one this week to Hayes, Kansas, who's a powerhouse up there in Kansas. But we had some video of them from their first game and had kind of a tentative game plan put together. So we practiced on Choctaw a week last week. We cut our meetings back, cut practice back just a little bit in an attempt to keep the kids fresh during a bye week. And then after we got both of their games on Huddle Saturday, we went ahead and refined our game plan and added some things that we needed to add and delete some things that we needed to delete. And this week will be a typical work week. So last week was good from a standpoint of maybe getting our kids' legs underneath them, and then also we spent Friday doing a little bit of metabolic plays, which is kind of conditioning. Once we have that game shape, we want to do everything we can to keep it.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that, and that is harder in a bye week. It's just not. You want the intensity to be the same, but there's something natural about it not. Now, I was going to ask you about Choctaw's schedule because they played a Lubbock team first, Monterey, and they win that one. They lose to the Hayes, Kansas team, but they came back and had a chance to win that one late. So they're obviously different. But you mentioned refining. I always find it interesting. Game one to game two, teams change. Of course, they change a little bit because of the other team. How much did you see them change? And is it pretty normal for you to have to do that and say week two, week three?
Well, for me, it looks like they've just become more and more aggressive. I think they're understanding what their personality is. They're extremely talented in the back end, and can be a little bit more aggressive defensively. And then offensively, they're throwing a ton of quick game and quarterback runs. And every team does, as you mentioned, Rick, start to develop an identity as the season goes along. And I think they're starting to understand that. And then also, Hayes, Kansas dictates that a little bit as well. They have a big, powerful offensive line and a good quarterback run game, and is a team that's satisfied with 4 yards in a cloud of dust. And so the game plan had to be just a little bit different for those guys than the Lubbock Monterey team.
And at quarterback, they've got a 6'4", 220-pounder. Then they've got a 6'7", 230-pound receiver. Tell me a little bit about those guys and what they're really good at. Sounds like being big.
Yeah, the quarterback, he's a big, as you mentioned, physical presence. He was their running quarterback last year and played quite a few snaps against us and does some really good things. They run some power read and some design quarterback run with him. And then the big tight end is enormous, 6'7", had a big catch against Hayes last week as a gigantic target and does some things really well, who also played last year as a sophomore against us. They've got quite a few guys with Division One offers. On defense, I two guys I know for sure. One's committed to Boston College. One's got some North Texas, New Mexico offers, and then I'm probably missing one of the guys that has them as well. And then on offense, skill guys are extremely talented, and they play some guys both ways. A good little running back, that had a good night against us last year as well.
Yeah, he's got 4.5 speed, as a matter of fact. And the tight end, Titus Hawk, he's got, I think, 10 D1 or FBS offers as of right now. So a very talented team. What did you see them? You talked about some differences between week 1 and 2. And again, Hayes does some of that. But did you see them have that typical kind of growth teams have?
Yeah, and although they came away with a loss, you saw them being more disciplined, protecting the ball better, putting together some drives and doing some really good things. Hayes was a good team and a good test for them to get 4 quarters out of. But yeah, they're definitely a team that's well coached. It's getting better. I think I mentioned to you last week, Rick, their defensive coordinator is a former staffer of ours, Brad Clark. He was our defensive line coach for years, kind of in the early years of our state championship runs.
All right. So before we get on to some other interesting things for Bixby football, this is Coach Loren Montgomery. We are brought to you by Sunrise Cafe 101st and Sheridan. Coach and I are both big fans. I wanted to read you this recipe. This is one of their breakfasts. Now they do huevos rancheros, which is a kind of a Mexican slash breakfast, but they do it so differently. And I'd not had this before until not long ago. So it's 1 flour tortilla. Then they put homemade black bean chili all over it. Then they put grilled chicken and then a couple of cheeses, jack and cheddar. Then they put avocado, sour cream, and salsa, and then a second tortilla with refried beans, green chilies, jack and cheddar cheeses, both with a sunny side up egg, and then seasoned breakfast potatoes with it.
I'm telling you, yeah.
Right now,
Yeah,
it's a little different than you've had before. It just shows you what they do at Sunrise Cafe. Yes, it's breakfast food, but it's different. It's also lunch food. They're open until 2:30 in the afternoon. You can go anytime, 101st and Sheridan next to St. Clair. Thanks to Randy for doing this. He looks like Santa Claus. You'll know him when he goes in. And you may see Coach there. You may see me there. But I'm telling you, you're going to see a lot of folks because it's terrific food. One of the things I think is interesting about a bye week, Coach, and this happens, I mean, maybe more in when you're playing against teams that are incredibly varied, like Tulsa had Navy, and that's an offense you're only going to face once or twice a year if you face Navy and Army. And so a lot of teams will put aside 10 minutes in practice every day, no matter who you're preparing for, and do a little work on something if it's really different. Do you guys ever do that on a bye week, or do you do that during the week, or are you just working? I mean, you're working Bixby, but then you just working the team ahead, or do you ever find that's helpful?
No, we will, and we have in the past. When we know we're going to play a team that has an unorthodox defense, maybe coming up that you don't see but once a year, we'll sprinkle that in on 1 day a week so our guys can get used to saying it, and we go ahead and let them know. We're gonna face the wishbone, or we're going to face this particular defense, and we've got to practice for that. And I think there's value in it. I think it increases your guys' football IQ, and then gives you an opportunity to work on some things that maybe present themselves in a game or a similar look that you might not anticipate seeing.
And sometimes too, it helps. I don't want to. This is almost a bad term, but I don't want to say boredom. but guys do the same things all the time. And something a little different makes that it's kind of interesting. It gets a little more attention sometimes too, doesn't it?
Well, I think it does. It improves focus in practice. I know, one of the things, and you've watched our offense play. We do a lot of stuff, and each week we put a lot of stuff on our guys' plates. And I think there's value in stressing the guys a little bit mentally. Where they have to focus in meetings, where they have to focus when we're out on the practice field, or maybe they have to make a mistake or two and refine it as the week goes on. And it's kind of been an unintended consequence of us, pushing the envelope with shifts and motions and movements and things like that. Is that I think our guys' attention to detail and focus has become better in practice.
Oh, I mean, it shows on the field. There's no doubt about that. And I think we all know because you mentioned the bush bone. Not a lot of people run a straight bone in these days, but everybody knows it's a hard offense to get ready for. But when you say defense, not people would just generally think, well, it's defense. It's not really that difference. But if you were, in the Tulsa days with Todd Graham, the odd stack, that 3-3, that's an odd defense. You don't see a lot of people play it, and not a lot of people play it well. Defensively, what are some of the things that are harder to get ready for?
Well, for all those years when we played Stillwater, when we were in 6A Division Two, we played Stillwater a couple of times, multiple times in a year, and we played them a couple of times for state championships, and then in the playoffs or what have you. And you've seen their defense, Rick. You've called some of their games, and it's extremely unorthodox. They do all sorts of stuff, and so for our guys first exposure, not having been, in that game against that defense with guys standing up, moving around, not lining up in typical gaps and those sorts of things, and sometimes even not being gap sound. It's good work for our guys to get that, and so that would be one that we had prepared for in years past, and then also when we prepared during the week, we I guess make an educated guess on what someone's changeup will be because every now and then we'll come out on a Friday night and a team lines up in a defense that we haven't seen on film, as a game plan thing, trying to give you a different flavor. And so on Wednesdays, we'll take a look at what maybe we think their changeup will be.
Yeah, the good news is if they had to change on Wednesday or Thursday, then they're a little desperate, and that's some good news in there. And the coach knows what I'm talking about. Last thing before you go, every team gets 3-4 weeks in, and they find out their personality, who they really are. Your teams haven't changed a lot. They've always been businesslike. They've always been really hard working. As a matter of fact, one of the Tulsa coaches commented to me the other day. He said, "Man, when you turn the film on game night, those guys are different at Bixby," which I thought was a very much a testament to you and your program. What do you think this team's personality is going to be by the end of the year now?
It's hard to say. I can just hope. I hope we continue to play at a super high level of intensity. I feel like the last couple of weeks our guys have gone out and played super intense. Like effort has been phenomenal, and I want that to be our calling card always. And then I think we've done a pretty decent job at eliminating some silly mistakes the first couple games. The first game was pretty clean, and then the last game was pretty clean for the most part. Made some mistakes later on as we got into the game, but I think a smart, super physical team that plays with their ears pinned back would be what I would want our calling card to be.
Well, I think you certainly have that. Well, hey, look, go wash that hat. Maybe you can get that smell out of there. I don't know if you want the smell out of there. If you got a hasty bake smell in there, if you don't know what we're referring to, just roll the tape back a little bit and you'll find out more. Well, good luck. And we'll talk again next week after Choctaw. Thanks very much.
Hey, thanks, Rick. Appreciate it.